In the quiet town of Everwood, the sun always seemed to shine just a little too brightly. The townsfolk smiled through their days, tending gardens and hosting festivals, their lives a picture of small-town serenity. But then came the whispers, soft at first, then insistent. A child's doll was found shredded in the woods, its glass eyes staring blankly at the sky. Strange symbols appeared on barn doors overnight, etched in what looked like soot but smelled of something fouler. The townspeople tried to laugh it off, blaming vandals or wild animals, yet the air grew heavy with unease. Soon a farmer vanished, leaving only a blood-streaked plow behind. What unseen force was unraveling this idyllic facade? This isn't just a ghost story. It's a glimpse into what Carl Jung called the shadow, the hidden part of our psyche we bury deep, hoping it never surfaces. Today we embark on a chilling journey into the darkest corners of the human mind, guided by Jung's psychology and Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy to unveil the horrors we carry within us all. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist born in 1875, peered into the abyss of the unconscious and gave it a name, the shadow. He saw it as the repository of everything we reject about ourselves, our fears, our shameful desires, our unacknowledged rage. Across the philosophical divide stands Friedrich Nietzsche, the German thinker who, in the late 19th century, declared God dead and challenged us to confront the void left behind. Nietzsche's ideas about the will to power and the transcendence of morality unearth a different shade of darkness, one that revels in the chaos of human instinct. Though their paths never crossed, their works intertwine like tendrils in a gothic tale, each illuminating the monstrous undercurrents of our nature. Jung sought to heal the psyche by facing its shadows. Nietzsche urged us to embrace the abyss and rise above it. Together they offer a map to the uncharted territories of the soul, where mystery festers and horror lurks. Their insights resonate because they dared to ask, what lies beneath the masks we wear, and what happens when those masks slip? This journey promises no comfort, only revelation. We'll peel back the layers of the human psyche, exposing the shadows that shape our thoughts and deeds. From Jung's exploration of the personal unconscious to Nietzsche's radical vision of a world without moral anchors, we'll traverse a landscape both familiar and alien, where the line between sanity and madness blurs. Expect tales of psychological descent, real cases and imagined horrors that mirror the theories we'll unpack. We'll probe the nightmares that hint at our buried selves and the societal shadows that erupt in chaos. This isn't a dry lecture. It's a descent into a labyrinth of the mind, where each turn reveals something unsettling yet profound. By the end, you'll see the shadow not as a mere concept, but as a living presence, perhaps even catch its reflection in your own eyes. So, dim the lights, silence the world outside, and join me as we unveil the dark side of human nature, a tale stitched with psychology, mystery, and a shiver of dread. Jung's shadow isn't a metaphor. It's a psychological reality, a cellar packed with the parts of ourselves we'd rather forget. Picture it, a version of you that harbors every suppressed impulse, every forbidden thought, every trait you've deemed too ugly to claim. It's not evil by nature, Jung argued, but it becomes dangerous when ignored. Born from the clash between our conscious identity and the raw material of our unconscious, the shadow forms as we grow, shaped by family, culture, and personal shame. A child scolded for anger learns to bury it. An adult praised for kindness disowns their envy. Over time, these cast-off pieces coalesce into a silent twin, lurking beneath our polished exterior. Jung believed this shadow influences us subtly, through a biting remark we can't explain, a fleeting urge to lash out, or a dream that leaves us trembling. To deny it is to court disaster, for what we repress doesn't vanish. It waits, gathering strength in the dark, ready to erupt when our guard slips. The shadow is our first clue to the horror within. How does this shadow take root? Imagine a young girl, raised to be polite and demure, her every tantrum met with disapproval. She learns to smile through her fury, to swallow her screams until they sink into the unconscious, joining a growing horde of silenced emotions. Society plays its part too, enforcing norms that demand we shun certain traits, aggression in women, vulnerability in men, curiosity that defies tradition. These rejected fragments don't dissolve. They fester, forming a shadow unique to each of us, yet eerily universal. Jung saw this process as inevitable, a byproduct of civilization's veneer over our primal instincts. The more we strive to be good, the more we feed this hidden self with what we refuse to face. It's a paradox. Our quest for light casts a deeper darkness. And when that darkness stirs, perhaps in a moment of stress or temptation, it reveals itself not as a stranger, but as a distorted mirror of who we are, whispering truths we've long avoided. The mystery lies in its elusiveness, the horror in its familiarity. The shadow doesn't stay quiet. It seeps into our lives like a fog, coloring our actions in ways we barely notice. Ever snapped at someone for no reason, only to feel a pang of guilt you couldn't place? That's the shadow at work, projecting onto others what we can't admit in ourselves. A man who despises laziness might secretly dread his own procrastination, his criticism a shield against self-awareness. Jung called this projection a mechanism where the shadow hijacks our perceptions, turning friends into foes and flaws into accusations. It can manifest more violently too. An outburst of rage from a calm person, a betrayal by someone trustworthy. These moments feel alien, as if a stranger took the reins. But Jung insisted they're not possession, they're revelation. Literature abounds with examples. Dr. Jekyll's Hyde is the shadow unleashed, a civilized man's descent into his own brutality. In real life, we see it in sudden scandals. Quiet neighbors revealed as monsters. The horror isn't just in the act, it's in the realization that the shadow was always there, waiting for its moment. Ignore the shadow at your peril, Jung warned, for repression is a ticking bomb. When we refuse to face it, the shadow doesn't wither. It grows, feeding on our denial until it breaks free in ways we can't control. Neuroses emerge, obsessions, phobias, anxieties with no clear source, hints of a psyche at war with itself. Worse still are the eruptions. A mother who drowns her children, a preacher caught in depravity, their shadows no longer content to whisper. Jung saw this in his patients, people haunted by impulses they couldn't name, their lives unraveling as the unconscious exacted its toll. The horror lies in the unpredictability. We think we know ourselves until the shadow proves us wrong. Think of Poe's The Telltale Heart, where guilt and madness drive a man to confess his crime. The shadow once buried beats louder than any heart. To Jung, the solution wasn't suppression, but confrontation. Only by meeting this dark twin can we disarm it, stripping away the mystery that cloaks it in terror and reclaiming the power it holds over us. While Jung mapped the shadow's terrain, Nietzsche tore down the moral scaffolding that hides it. Born in 1844, he saw a world clinging to crumbling certainties, religion, tradition, the idea of inherent goodness, and declared them illusions. God is dead, he famously wrote, not as a celebration, but a diagnosis. Humanity had lost its anchor, leaving us adrift in a sea of meaninglessness. From this void sprang his concept of the will to power, the primal drive that fuels all life, from the ant's struggle to the tyrant's conquest. Unlike Jung's introspective lens, Nietzsche's gaze was existential, urging us to face the abyss not with fear but with defiance. Morality, he argued, is a shackle forged by the weak to tame the strong, a lie that buries our darker instincts under guilt and shame. To him, the shadow isn't a problem to solve, it's a force to harness. Where Jung sought integration, Nietzsche demanded we transcend, turning our chaos into creation. His philosophy is a gothic hymn to the untamed, a call to embrace the horror of our own potential. Nietzsche didn't use the term unconscious as Jung did, but his ideas pulse with its presence. He saw human behavior as a battlefield of instincts, lust, aggression, the hunger for dominance, cloaked by civilized pretense. These drives aren't flaws to be excised. They're the essence of life, pulsing beneath our pious mass. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he writes of the beast within, a raw vitality that society seeks to cage. Sound familiar? It's the shadow by another name, though Nietzsche refused to pathologize it. Where Jung saw a hidden self to be understood, Nietzsche saw a wellspring of power, suppressed by centuries of moral dogma. He mocked the herd mentality that fears these depths, urging individuals to dive into them instead. Imagine a man standing at a cliff's edge, the wind howling with whispers of his buried desires. Nietzsche would tell him to leap, to find strength in the fall. The horror here isn't in the darkness itself, but in our refusal to claim it, a refusal that leaves us half alive, trembling at our own shadows. Enter the Übermensch, Nietzsche's vision of a being who rises above the wreckage of morality to forge their own values. This overman isn't a superhero, but a psychological ideal, someone who stares into the abyss and doesn't flinch. The Übermensch doesn't deny the shadow. They weave it into their essence, transforming base instincts into something sublime. Picture a sculptor chiseling a masterpiece from jagged stone. The raw material is brutal, chaotic, but the artist's will shapes it into beauty. Nietzsche believed we're all capable of this alchemy, if only we'd shed the fear that binds us. Unlike Jung's cautious integration, this is a radical embrace, a dance with the darkness that risks madness for the sake of greatness. The horror lies in the stakes. Fail, and you're lost to the void. Succeed, and you become something more than human. It's a gothic gamble, a narrative of transformation that echoes Frankenstein's hubris, yet rejects its despair. For Nietzsche, the shadow isn't a burden. It's the spark of divinity in our mortal coil, waiting to be unleashed. Jung and Nietzsche approach the dark side from different angles, yet their paths converge in the unconscious. Jung's shadow is personal, a psychological entity born of individual experience, while Nietzsche's instincts are universal, the bedrock of humanity itself. Both recognize a hidden force shaping us, Jung with a clinician's precision, Nietzsche with a poet's fire. Where Jung sees a patient to heal, Nietzsche sees a warrior to awaken. Where Jung seeks balance, Nietzsche craves upheaval. Yet their shared fascination with the unseen binds them. Jung's patients wrestled with dreams that echoed Nietzsche's beasts, wild, untamed, yearning for release. Both understood that denying these depths breeds weakness. For Jung, it's neurosis. For Nietzsche, it's mediocrity. Their differences enrich the mystery. Jung's shadow slinks through the mind like a specter, subtle and insidious, while Nietzsche's will roars like a storm, demanding we ride its chaos. Together, they frame the human condition as a gothic drama, a struggle between light and dark where the true horror is not the shadow itself, but our refusal to face it. Synthesize their ideas and a fuller picture emerges, the shadow as both wound and weapon. Jung offers the tools, introspection, dream analysis, to unearth it. Nietzsche provides the courage to wield it. Imagine a man haunted by guilt over a violent impulse. Jung would guide him to confront it, to see it as part of his whole self. Nietzsche would challenge him to channel it, to create something fierce and new. Their union suggests a dynamic process. First, we meet the shadow, peeling back its layers with Jung's care. Then we transcend it, Nietzsche's way, turning its energy into purpose. This interplay mirrors horror's own arc, fearful discovery followed by mastery or doom. Their combined vision reveals the psyche as a haunted house, its rooms filled with echoes of repressed truths, its halls leading to either salvation or ruin. The mystery lies in the choice. Do we cower from our darkness or do we claim it? The answer, both Jung and Nietzsche imply, determines whether we live as ghosts or gods. History offers grim proof of the shadow's power. Consider the rise of Nazi Germany, a nation gripped by economic despair and wounded pride, projecting its collective shadow onto scapegoats, Jews, outsiders, the other. Jung, who lived through this era, saw it as the shadow unleashed on a societal scale, a repressed rage and fear metastasizing into genocide. The leaders weren't anomalies. They tapped into a darkness shared by millions, a latent cruelty that civilization had only masked. Nietzsche's will to power resonates here too, not as a noble ascent, but as a perversion, the herd's blind drive for dominance. The horror isn't just in the atrocities, but in their ordinariness. Desk clerks and farmers became killers, their shadows slipping free under the right conditions. Psychology reveals this as projection writ large. A society unwilling to face its flaws casts them outward, birthing monsters from its own reflection. The lesson chills. The shadow doesn't discriminate. It waits in us all, poised to erupt when denial meets opportunity. Yet the shadow isn't all destruction. It's a fount of creativity, too. Artists have long danced with their darkness, channeling it into works that haunt and inspire. Van Gogh's swirling skies pulse with his torment. Poe's tales drip with the dread he couldn't shake. Jung saw this as the shadow's gift. When integrated, it fuels imagination, lending depth to what might otherwise be shallow. Nietzsche agreed, celebrating art as the sublimation of our wildest drives. Consider The Shining. Stephen King's Jack Torrance is a man consumed by his shadow, his creative block shattering under its weight, yet the story itself is a masterpiece born of that same darkness. Psychology shows us this duality. The unconscious can destroy or create, depending on how we meet it. The horror lies in the tightrope. Lose balance, and you fall into madness. Hold steady, and you craft something eternal. The mystery is in the alchemy. How does the same shadow that drives a murderer also paint the Sistine Chapel? Societies, like individuals, cast shadows, and they often pin them on the vulnerable. Think of witch hunts. Women branded as devils, their crimes a mirror to the Puritans' own forbidden desires. Jung called this the collective shadow, a shared pool of repressed fears and hatreds that erupts in scapegoating. Nietzsche saw it in the herd's resentment, the weak banding together to punish the strong, or those they envy. Today we see it in cancel culture or xenophobia, where groups project their insecurities onto outsiders, cleansing themselves through blame. The horror is cyclical. Each purge feeds the shadow, deepening the next outbreak. Psychology reveals the mechanism. Projection shields us from self-scrutiny, but at a cost. Entire wars have sprung from this, nations demonizing others to avoid their own rot. The mystery lies in the persistence. Why do we repeat this dance knowing its end? Perhaps because facing the collective shadow demands a courage we rarely muster, leaving us to haunt ourselves with our own ghosts. Horror thrives on the unseen, and the shadow is its perfect muse. In Frankenstein, the monster isn't just flesh. It's Victor's buried ambition, his shadow given form. Werewolves howl the same truth. Beneath our skin lies a beast we can't outrun. These tales grip us because they echo Jung's insight. The shadow terrifies not because it's foreign, but because it's ours. Psychology meets horror here, revealing fear as a signal, a flare from the unconscious warning us of what we've ignored. Nietzsche saw this too in our dread of the abyss. It's not emptiness we fear, but what stares back. Films like The Babadook literalize this. A creature born of grief, growing stronger the more it's denied. The genre's power lies in this truth. Confront the monster, and you might survive. Flee, and it consumes you. The mystery is in the ambiguity. Is the shadow a demon to slay or a self to save? Horror suggests both, leaving us trembling at the edge of knowing. Dreams are the shadow's playground, a theater where it struts unchecked. Jung saw them as messages from the unconscious, often cloaked in symbols too strange to decipher at first glance. A woman dreams of a faceless figure chasing her through endless corridors. Waking, she shrugs it off, but Jung would ask, "What are you running from?" Nightmares amplify this, thrusting the shadow into stark relief. Monsters, blood, a fall that never ends. They're not random. They're the psyche screaming what the waking mind won't hear. Nietzsche, though less focused on dreams, hinted at their potency, calling sleep a return to our primal roots. Psychology confirms this. REM sleep unleashes the unconscious, weaving tales that horrify yet enlighten. A man dreams of strangling a friend, waking in sweat-soaked terror. The shadow, perhaps, reveals a jealousy he's buried. The horror lies in the invasion. Even sleep offers no escape. The mystery is in the meaning. Are these visions warnings, confessions, or both? The shadow's allure is its taboo, a siren call to the forbidden. We're drawn to true crime, to gothic novels, to the macabre. Why? Jung would say it's the shadow beckoning, offering a glimpse of what we've locked away. Nietzsche saw it as life's pulse, the thrill of brushing against our rawest selves. This dance with darkness is universal. Children peek through fingers at scary movies. Adults binge tales of serial killers. Psychology labels it sublimation. We flirt with the shadow safely, through fiction or fascination, rather than action. Yet the line blurs. A collector of murder memorabilia might harbor more than curiosity. The horror is in the proximity. How close are we to crossing over? The mystery lies in the attraction. Is it recognition? A perverse nostalgia for our own depths? Whatever the answer, the shadow's pull is undeniable. A magnetic dread that promises both terror and truth, luring us to the edge of the abyss where we might finally see ourselves. Jung called it individuation, the quest to become whole by embracing the shadow. It's no gentle process. It's a descent into the psyche's underbelly, armed only with courage and curiosity. Picture a man who loathes his temper, each outburst a stain on his good self. Jung would urge him to face it, not to indulge but to understand. Through therapy or reflection, he might trace it to a childhood of stifled voice, a wound that festers still. Integration doesn't mean unleashing the shadow. It's a dialogue, a truce that robs it of its secret power. Nietzsche's Übermensch looms here too, not as a literal goal, but as inspiration to rise above mere repression. The horror is in the confrontation. Meeting your shadow feels like staring down a specter, its features shifting between stranger and kin. Yet the mystery is in the reward. Jung promised not just peace, but a richer self, forged in the crucible of truth. It's a gothic redemption where the monster becomes the muse. How do we do this shadow work? Start small, a journal where you spill your ugliest thoughts, jealousy, spite, the daydreams you'd never admit aloud. Jung favored active imagination, a meditative plunge into the unconscious. Close your eyes, summon your shadow, and ask what it wants. A woman might see a snarling crone, a man, a hulking brute. Don't flinch, listen. Therapy amplifies this, a guide to navigate the murk. Dreams offer clues too. Record them, sift for patterns, decode their riddles. Nietzsche's approach is less structured. Face life head-on, question every should, and let your instincts speak. The horror lies in the rawness. Peeling back your mask risks shame, fear, a glimpse of something feral. Yet the mystery is in the method. No two shadows are alike, and yours might whisper secrets only you can hear. Practicality meets the uncanny here. A psychological seance where you summon what's been buried, hoping to strike a pact with the dark. The payoff is transformation, a self unburdened by denial, alive with authenticity. Imagine a woman who owns her ambition, once cloaked as selfishness, now fueling her career, or a man who admits his grief, shedding the stoic shell to connect deeply with others. Jung saw this as the path to wholeness, a psyche no longer split but harmonized. Nietzsche might call it power, not domination, but sovereignty over one's nature. The horror fades as the shadow loses its menace, revealed as a teacher, not a tyrant. Studies back this up. Facing repressed emotions reduces anxiety, boosts resilience. Yet the mystery lingers. Why does embracing the dark make us lighter? Perhaps because it frees us from the lie of perfection, letting us live as flawed, fierce humans. It's a gothic twist. The beast doesn't devour us. It leads us home. The shadow, once a source of dread, becomes the key to a life fully claimed. We've journeyed far, from Everwood's unraveling to the shadow's whispered truths, from Nietzsche's abyss to Jung's redemption. We've seen the dark side of human nature, not as a curse, but as a constant, a shadow cast by every light we chase. Jung taught us it hides in our unconscious, shaping us until we dare to look. Nietzsche showed it's our vitality, a force to wield or waste. Together they paint the psyche as a Gothic cathedral, grand, shadowed, alive with echoes. We've met it in history's horrors, art's revelations, dreams' terrors, and found it staring back in our own reflections. The mystery has unfolded, The shadow isn't separate. It's us, a piece of the soul we can't outrun. The horror, too, has shifted, not in its presence, but in our power to face it. This script has been a mirror, a map, a descent into the unknown, and now it's yours to carry forward. Why does this matter? Because the shadow doesn't sleep. It stirs in personal grudges, societal rifts, the quiet moments when we feel least ourselves. Ignoring it risks ruin. Confronting it offers growth. Jung and Nietzsche, for all their differences, agree the dark side isn't the end, it's the beginning. Societies heal by owning their collective shadows, not projecting them. Individuals thrive by integrating, not denying. The horror of our nature is matched by its potential. Out of chaos comes creation. Out of fear, strength. This isn't a call to wallow in darkness, but to illuminate it, to see the full spectrum of what we are. Psychology demands this reckoning, stripping away illusions to reveal a truth as unsettling as it is liberating. The Shadow's tale is humanity's tale, a gothic saga where the monsters are ours to tame, the mysteries ours to solve. Embracing it doesn't erase the dread, it reclaims it as power. So, where do you stand? Have you felt the shadows tug, an anger you can't place, a dream that lingers too long? It's there, patient, waiting for you to turn and face it. Jung would ask you to listen. Nietzsche would dare you to leap. This journey ends not with answers, but with a question. What hides in your depths, and what might you become by unveiling it? The horror is yours to explore, the mystery yours to unravel. Step into your own darkness, bring a lantern, or go barehanded, and see what stares back. The shadow isn't a phantom to banish, it's a self to know, a force to shape. In the silence after these words, listen closely. That rustle, that whisper, that shiver down your spine. Could it be your shadow calling you home? The choice is yours and the night is long.